They say a mother's love is the most selfless thing in the world, an endless well of sacrifice and devotion. But what happens when the child you poured your entire soul into, the one you gave up everything for, becomes the very person who breaks your heart? This is my story. It's a story of dreams given up, of a lifetime of sacrifice, and a betrayal so cruel. It left me with nothing but the clothes on my back, standing alone on a cold, unforgiving street. I was only 34 when my world fell apart. A sudden illness, swift and merciless, took my husband from me. One day he was there, his laughter filling our small home, and the next, silence. I was left with a 6-year-old daughter, a mountain of grief, and a future that felt like a dark, endless tunnel. There were so many nights I'd cry into my pillow, muffling the sobs so she wouldn't hear. But every morning I'd wipe away the tears, put on a brave smile, and face the day. For her, she was my reason, my light in the darkness. She was all I had left. Every single coin I earned, every dream I quietly packed away, was for her. I wanted her to have the life I couldn't. I worked double shifts at the local diner, my hands raw and cracked from scrubbing pots and pans. When I got home exhausted, I'd pull out my old sewing machine and stitch clothes for neighbors late into the night. The hum of the machine a constant companion in our quiet home. There were times I'd tell her I wasn't hungry, just so she could have a second helping, her small, satisfied smile being all the nourishment I needed. We didn't have fancy things. Our furniture was worn, our clothes were mended, but our home was filled with love. I can still remember our little dinners at the kitchen table, her chattering away about school. I remember the sound of her laughter echoing through the house when I'd accidentally burn the toast, and she'd playfully tease me. We'd spend hours reading fairy tales by the dim, flickering light of an old lamp, her head resting on my lap. Through all those years of hardship, I held on to one unwavering belief. If I gave her everything, she would be my rock when I grew old. She would be the one to hold my hand, just as I had held hers. But life, as I learned, has a devastating way of shattering our most cherished beliefs. As she grew into a young woman, I saw my dreams taking flight in her. She was bright, ambitious, and she wanted to go to college in the big city. The acceptance letter was a moment of pure joy. I framed it. It represented everything I had worked for, but the tuition, it was more money than I had ever seen. I didn't hesitate. I sold our little house, the only home we'd ever known, filled with memories of her father. I cashed in my small retirement savings. I gave her every last penny, moving into a tiny rented room. When she asked if I was sure, I just smiled and said, "This is for your future." It's the best investment I could ever make. I believed it with all my heart. The first year was wonderful. She called every week, telling me about her classes, her new friends. I lived for those calls. Then they became less frequent. "I'm busy, Mum," she'd say, her voice rushed. Exams are coming up. I understood. I told myself it was normal. I sent her care packages with her favorite snacks and a little extra cash whenever I could spare it, even if it meant my own meals were smaller that week. Then, during her second year, she met him. His name was Mark. He came from a wealthy family, and from the way she talked about him, he was her entire world. The calls became even rarer. When I did speak to her, all I heard about was Mark, his family's yacht, their lavish parties, their vacations. My daughter, who grew up knowing the value of every dollar, was now living in a world I couldn't even imagine. A cold fear started to creep into my heart. I tried to talk to her, to gently remind her of where she came from. Don't forget who you are. I'd say, I'm not, Mum, she'd snap back, her voice laced with an irritation I'd never heard before. You just don't understand. The summer after her graduation, she called with news. She was getting married. I was overjoyed, tears streaming down my face. When can I meet his parents? I asked, my heart pounding with excitement. There was a long pause on the other end. About that, Mum, Mark's parents, they're very particular. We think it's best if maybe you don't come to the wedding. The words hit me like a physical blow. I couldn't breathe. What? What do you mean? I stammered. It's just, it would be complicated, she said, her voice distant, cold. Your job, where you live. It's not the image we want to present. We'll have a small celebration with you later. I promise. She was ashamed of me. The mother who had scrubbed floors for her education. The mother who sold her home for her future. I was an embarrassment, a complication. That was the last time we spoke. A few weeks later, a check arrived in the mail. It was a large sum of money, more than I'd seen in years. There was no letter, no card, just the check, signed in her elegant new handwriting. It wasn't a gift. It was a payment. A final transaction to sever the ties, to buy my silence. It was blood money for the years of love and sacrifice I had given her. I tore it into 100 tiny pieces. That money was an insult to everything we had been. The months that followed were a blur of grief. Not for a death, but for a living loss that felt so much worse. The landlord raised the rent on my small room, and without her support, I couldn't afford it. One grey afternoon, I packed my few belongings into a single bag. As I stood on the sidewalk, watching the new tenants move in, the full weight of my reality crashed down on me. I was homeless. I had sacrificed my home, my savings, my entire life for my daughter's dream, and in return, she had left me on the street. I had given her my everything, and she had taken it, leaving me with absolutely nothing. As I walked away from the only neighborhood I had ever known, with no destination in mind, a single bitter thought consumed me. Was a mother's love meant to lead to this? To be a story of sacrifice that ends not in gratitude, but in utter and complete abandonment? Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever felt heartbreak or betrayal, know that you are not alone. Please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support means more than you know. Stay strong and never forget your own worth. As my daughter grew, her eyes began to sparkle with a different kind of light. It was the light of ambition. She'd talk for hours about success, about making a name for herself, and above all, about one dream that seemed to outshine all the others, a home of her own. A real home, Ma, she'd say, her hands sketching invisible blueprints in the air. A place with big, wide windows where the sunlight just pours in. A place that feels alive, you know? Every time she spoke like that, my heart would swell with pride. I thought, this is it. This is the dream we can share. Her dream home would be my dream home too. I could picture it so clearly, her walking in after a long day at work, dressed in her smart career clothes, to me, in the kitchen, the smell of her favorite dinner filling the air. And maybe, just maybe, one day, the sound of grandchildren running down the halls, their laughter echoing off the walls. It was a beautiful picture, a perfect future. But as time went on, a tiny, unsettling feeling started to creep in. Her words were always warm, but her eyes, they seemed distant. When she talked about her future home, the words were always I, my, and me. My success. My independence. My space. I'd smile and nod. But a quiet question began to form in the back of my mind. Am I a part of this beautiful dream, or am I just a stepping stone she leaves behind once she gets there? I tried to push the thought away. She's my daughter, I told myself. But of course, her dream includes me. Then came the evening that changed everything. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow across the kitchen. She sat across from me at the small table, her expression serious. Ma, she began, her voice steady, almost as if she'd practiced what she was about to say. I need to talk to you. I put down my teacup, a sense of heaviness suddenly filling the air. She took a deep breath, and her next words hit me with the force of a tidal wave. I've found it, she said. The perfect house. It's everything I've ever dreamed of. But I can't do it on my own. I need your help. My heart skipped a beat. My help, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Yes, she said, her hand reaching across the table to take mine. Her grip was firm. Your savings. All those years you worked so hard. Ma, it's not just for me. It's for us. Think of it as an investment in our family. You'll always have a place there with me, I promise. Her words felt like 1,000 tiny needles piercing my heart. My savings. My small nest egg. The security I had painstakingly built over a lifetime of long nights and aching bones. It wasn't much in the grand scheme of things, but to me, it was everything. It was my safety net, my peace of mind for the years to come. Every rational thought, every instinct for self-preservation screamed at me to say no, to hold on to what was mine. But then I looked into her eyes. My daughter. The reason for every sacrifice, every hardship I had ever faced. How could I say no to her? How could I be the one to stand in the way of her happiness? Tears welled up, blurring her face into a soft, hopeful image. With a trembling breath, I nodded. Yes, my child, take it, go and build your dream. I watched as I placed my entire life's savings into her hands, and in that quiet, sun-drenched kitchen, I felt like I was giving her more than just money. I felt like I was giving her the culmination of my entire life's purpose, hoping, praying that it would be enough. I remember the day she first told me about the house. Her eyes shone bright with a future I was so eager to build with her. Ma, she'd said, it's our dream, yours and mine. I believed her. I believed that every cent I had saved, every sacrifice I had made was weaving us a shared future, a home where my heart would always have a place. When we finally moved, it was more beautiful than any picture she had painted. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny fairies. I ran my hand along the cool, smooth walls, my breath catching in my throat. This was it, our sanctuary. The reward for a lifetime of hard work. For a fleeting moment, I felt a joy so pure, so overwhelming, it brought tears to my eyes. We had done it. But a dream can curdle so quickly. The house, once a symbol of our bond, started to feel like a museum where I was a clumsy guest. Ma, don't put that there. It clashes with the decor. The vase I'd cherished for years was relegated to a dusty corner. Ma, please don't tell people you helped with the down payment. It's embarrassing. My contribution, once a source of pride, became a dirty secret. Each comment was a small chip at my heart, a constant reminder that I was out of place. The dream was hers, not ours. I was just a ghost, haunting the halls of her perfect life, a shadow she was growing tired of. I tried to reason with myself, telling myself it was just the stress of a new home, a new life, but a cold dread was settling in my bones. I was no longer her confidant, her safe harbor. I was becoming ... a burden. The final blow, the one that shattered my world completely, came on a Saturday evening. The house was alive with the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. She was hosting a party, her new husband by her side, both of them glowing. I sat in a quiet corner, content just to witness her happiness. That was always enough for me. Then one of her friends pointed at me and asked, "Is that your mother?" My daughter's laughter was strained, nervous. "Oh yes," she said, her voice a little too loud. "But she won't be staying long. We need our space, you know? Being newlyweds and all." The music seemed to fade away. The vibrant room went blurry. Her husband, the man I had welcomed into our family, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder and added, "That's right. It's time she found her own place. She'd be much happier." My entire body went cold. I could barely hear over the pounding in my ears. I looked at my daughter, the little girl I had rocked to sleep, the woman I had given everything to, and I saw a stranger. My voice was a choked whisper, barely audible, but this is my home, too. Her face, once so full of love, hardened into something I didn't recognize. Her eyes were cold, sharp. "No, Ma," she said, her voice cutting through the festive noise like a shard of ice. "You gave me the money, but this house is mine. You're old. You don't fit into this life. You don't belong here anymore." Her words weren't just a rejection. They were an execution. In that moment, she didn't just ask me to leave her house. She erased me from her life, severing the bond I thought was unbreakable. The dream wasn't just over, it became my worst nightmare. The home I built was now my prison, and my own daughter was the one holding the key, locking me out forever. Do you remember her first heartbreak? She cried right here in my arms. Her little voice whispered, "Ma, I'll always need you." How quickly those promises vanish, like mist in the morning sun. Just last week, I found myself on a cold park bench, the street lights flickering above like tired stars. I pulled out an old photograph of her. She was only 12, with that wide, gap-toothed smile that could light up a room. I held it to my chest, the flimsy paper the only warmth I had left. All around me, the world just kept moving. Couples walked by, their hands intertwined. Cars passed, their windows glowing with the warmth of families inside. And there I was, a mother, completely alone, with nowhere to go. The contrast was a sharp, unbearable pain. Her luxury, my suffering. Her beautiful palace, my lonely exile. And yet, even through the hurt, I found myself whispering a prayer for her. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We love, even when it breaks us. Word of what happened spread through our community like wildfire. Neighbors who used to greet me with smiles now whispered behind their hands. Relatives called, their voices thick with shock. "Did you hear?" They'd say she took her own mother's life savings and threw her out on the street. The admiration my daughter once bathed in, the respect she worked so hard for, all of it curdled into shame. Suddenly, people looked at her differently. They'd frown when she walked by. Friends she'd known for years started to grow distant, their calls becoming less frequent. Even at her high-powered job, the whispers followed her. She could feel the eyes on her back, hear the hushed conversations stop the moment she entered a room. The dream home she was so proud of, the one built with my sacrifice, began to feel less like a sanctuary and more like a cage of judgment. She could put on her brightest smile, but the heavy weight of disapproval clung to her like a shadow she couldn't escape. At first, she tried to ignore it all. She'd brush off the whispers, even laugh at the disapproving glares. "They're just jealous," she'd tell herself. But late at night, when the house was finally quiet, the silence was deafening. That's when the guilt, a tiny, creeping vine, would start to wrap around her heart. She started seeing my face in her dreams, not angry, but sad and tired. She'd wake up in a sweat, remembering the nights I worked late to pay for her lessons, the meals I skipped so she could have a little extra, the way I'd hold her for hours when she was sick with a fever. Slowly, her carefully constructed pride began to crumble, brick by brick. The grand house that once felt so alive with parties and laughter now echoed with emptiness. The friends she tried to impress were gone. Even her husband grew quiet and distant, the shame of her cruelty creating a canyon between them. One evening, she found herself sitting alone in her vast, beautifully decorated living room, tears streaming down her face. And for the very first time, she saw the truth, clear and devastating. Her dream home wasn't a palace celebrating her success. It was a prison built from betrayal, and she was the one who had locked herself inside. What happens when a daughter finally confronts the consequences of her actions? When the weight of guilt becomes too heavy to bear? The journey to redemption is often harder than the fall from grace. My story and hers is far from over. If this story has touched you, please subscribe and turn on notifications. We're going to explore what comes next, and you won't want to miss it. Thank you for listening. Have you ever felt like you've given your entire life to someone only to be left with nothing but echoes in an empty house? My story begins there, in the silence of a home that was no longer mine. For 30 years, I was more than just a mother. I was a gardener tending to a single, precious flower, my daughter, Clara. I poured all my love, my dreams, and my savings into her, believing my sacrifice would one day bloom into her happiness. When she married into a wealthy family, I thought my work was done. I sold my small home, packed my life into 2 suitcases, and moved in with her, ready to embrace a new chapter as a doting grandmother. But life has a cruel way of rewriting our expectations. My son-in-law, a man whose smile never quite reached his eyes, saw me not as family, but as an inconvenience. A freeloader, he called me, his words dripping with a disdain that chilled me to the bone. I tried to make myself useful, cleaning, cooking, caring for their home, as if it were my own. I became a silent shadow, shrinking myself to fit into the corners of their perfect life. I told myself it was for Clara, for the peace of her family, but every day a piece of me withered away. The breaking point came on a cold, rainy evening. An argument, louder and sharper than any before, pierced the pristine walls of their mansion. My son-in-law's voice was a hammer, and his target was me. "It's either her or me," he declared, the ultimatum hanging in the air like a guillotine. I looked at Clara, my daughter, the child I had rocked to sleep and nursed through fevers. I searched her eyes for a flicker of defiance, a spark of the love I had so carefully nurtured. But I found only fear and a heartbreaking silent plea for me to be the one to leave. In that moment, the foundation of my world crumbled. She chose him. She chose her new life over the woman who had given her everything. With my 2 suitcases and a heart shattered into 1,000 pieces, I walked out into the pouring rain. The world seemed to dissolve around me, each raindrop a tear for the life I had lost. I had nowhere to go, no one to turn to. The streets were cold and indifferent, a stark contrast to the warmth I had once known. I spent that first night huddled in a 24-hour fast food restaurant, the smell of stale coffee and fries mingling with my despair. The bright artificial lights kept the darkness at bay, but they couldn't illuminate a path forward. I felt invisible, a ghost haunting the edges of a world I no longer belonged to. Was this the reward for a lifetime of devotion? To be discarded like a worn-out piece of furniture? But even in the deepest darkness, a sliver of light can find its way through. As I sat there, lost in my grief, a young woman approached me. She was a cleaner, her face etched with a kindness that seemed almost foreign. She saw my tears, my trembling hands, and she didn't look away. She offered me a warm bun and a cup of hot soy milk. It was a simple gesture, but in that moment, it felt like a lifeline. We talked, and I poured out my story, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pain. She listened, her eyes filled with a compassion I hadn't seen in my own daughters. She told me about a small vacant room in her building, a place I could stay for a while. It wasn't a mansion, but it was a shelter. It was a start. As for me, I found strength in places I never expected. That small room, offered by a stranger's kindness, became my sanctuary. For the first time in years, I wasn't living for my daughter, for my son-in-law, or for anyone else's approval. I was living for myself. I started to rediscover the woman I was before I became just Clara's mother. I found a small job cleaning at a local community center. The work was humble, but it gave me a purpose, a reason to get up in the morning. I started saving, little by little, rebuilding my life one coin at a time. I made friends, women my age who shared stories and laughter over cups of tea. I learned that my worth wasn't tied to a grand house or a wealthy family. My worth was in my resilience, my kindness, my ability to stand back up after being knocked down. Then, one day, she came. My daughter, Clara. She stood at my door, her face pale and her eyes swollen from crying. The designer clothes she wore seemed out of place in my simple world. She fell to her knees, sobbing, begging for my forgiveness. She told me how empty her life had become, how the silence in her grand house was deafening. She told me she had made a terrible mistake. I listened, and as I looked at her, I didn't feel anger or resentment. I felt a deep, profound sadness for the both of us. I reached down and held her hands, and I forgave her. I told her I forgave her because holding on to bitterness would only poison the new life I was building. But I did not go back with her. I couldn't, because forgiveness does not erase betrayal. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, a way to release the pain that binds you. But trust, once broken, is a fragile thing. And love must also protect itself. I had learned the hard way that true love doesn't require you to erase yourself. I chose dignity over bitterness. I chose strength over dependence. And so, with a gentle smile, I said goodbye. I watched her walk away, back to her gilded cage. And I turned and walked slowly down my own sunlit street. Fragile, perhaps, but unbroken. While behind me, in her grand, empty home, I knew my daughter would now live with the echoes of regret. My story isn't just about a mother's pain, it's about a woman's rebirth. It's a reminder that no matter how much you love someone, you must never, ever forget to love yourself. If you are listening to this and you are fortunate enough to still have your mother, I hope you understand the weight of that gift. Cherish her, hold her close and listen to her stories. Don't wait until it's too late to see her value. Because the day you betray her love, the day you choose convenience over her heart, is the day you betray a fundamental part of yourself. Don't let regret be the loudest voice in the home you build. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories that remind us of what truly matters in life. We'll see you next time. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, I want to share a story that really hits home. It's a powerful reminder about family, respect, and the words we can never take back. Imagine a son standing at the peak of his life, about to get married. He's built a beautiful new home, a symbol of his success. But when his mother, the woman who gave him everything, asks for a small space in that home, he turns her away. He calls her too old, too traditional, a potential embarrassment in front of his new, modern life. He offers her money, a small apartment, anything but a place by his side. His words cut deeper than any knife. His mother, heartbroken and betrayed, feels her world crumble. She had poured her entire life into him, sacrificing her own dreams so he could chase his. And this was her reward: to be discarded like an old piece of furniture. With a heavy heart, she packed a small bag, taking only her dignity, and walked away from the home she had helped build and the son she had raised. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. Her silence was a testament to a pain too deep for words. The son, meanwhile, celebrates his new life. He throws a lavish party in his perfect house. His friends and new family are all there congratulating him. But amidst the laughter and the music, a question hangs in the air. Where's your mother? He makes excuses, of course. She's not feeling well. He lies. She prefers her quiet life. But the lie feels like ash in his mouth. Each time he says it, he sees her face, the quiet hurt in her eyes. The party ends, the guests leave, and the big, beautiful house falls silent. But it's not a peaceful silence. It's an empty, echoing void. He looks at the luxurious furniture, the expensive decorations, and suddenly, they all seem worthless. The house feels cold, hollow, because the one person who could fill it with warmth and love is gone, and it was he who had pushed her away. That's when the realization hits him like a physical blow. What had he done? In his foolish pride, in his desire to impress others, he had shamed the one person who loved him unconditionally. He had rejected and humiliated his own mother. The weight of his actions crashes down on him, and the pride he felt just hours ago crumbles into crushing, unbearable guilt. His heart breaks, and he understands far too late the true cost of his words. But it was late at night when he finally couldn't bear it anymore. He drove to the small apartment where she was staying. He knocked on the door, and when she opened it, he saw the boy she had once carried in her arms, now a broken man. His face was pale, his eyes red and swollen. "Ma," he choked out, falling to his knees. "Please, forgive me." Tears streamed down his cheeks. "I was wrong. I was so blind. Please, come home with me." She looked down at her son, and her heart ached. The wound he had inflicted was deep. She didn't shout. She didn't curse him. She simply spoke, her voice soft but firm. "My love for you never ended," she said, "but the pain you gave me, that won't fade so easily." He wept harder, begging for a chance to make it right. But she remained calm. Her dignity was all she had left. In that moment, her quiet strength was more powerful than any rage. Sometimes the most profound statements are made in silence. Sometimes restraint shows more strength than lashing out. Life moved on. He started his married life, and she continued with hers. In the end, of course, she forgave him, because a mother's heart, in its infinite capacity for love, always finds a way to forgive. He started visiting more often, his every gesture a quiet apology, his eyes filled with a guilt that never seemed to leave. But even with forgiveness, some things can't be fully mended. A scar remained on both of their hearts. At night, she would often sit by her window, looking at the stars, carrying her pain with a quiet grace that was both beautiful and heartbreaking. And he carried the heavy weight of regret. It became his shadow, following him everywhere. He would never forget the cruelty in his voice when he called her too old. He would never forget the look on her face as he forced that emptiness upon her. And because of that, his own life was never quite whole. His laughter never sounded quite the same. His joys were always tinged with a subtle sadness. Behind every achievement, every happy moment, there was the lingering echo of his betrayal. It's a difficult truth. A mother's love is eternal, but a child's betrayal leaves an echo that can last a lifetime. So this story leaves us with a simple, vital message. If you are lucky enough to still have your mother, hold her close. Call her. Tell her you love her. Cherish her while you can, because one day her chair will be empty. Her phone will go unanswered, and the silence that follows will echo louder and with more regret than any words she ever spoke. Thank you so much for listening. If this story resonated with you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that make us think and feel. Take care of each other.